Hello, and welcome to this HPE Developer Community Meetup. So in this session, I'm pleased to have Colin with me, who's part of the HPE Networking automation team. So he's gonna give some update around the SDK, the PyCentral, the version 2. There is a new thing, and also a demo, I think. And maybe before diving into the session, I would like to have some housekeeping item. The HP developer community have that web presence on and assembly the different content. We are pleased to present you. So we usually have meetup once a month, and in alternance we have mentioned that. So today we have Colin presenting the PyCentral, and in May we're gonna have Upfront team who's gonna present you the process automation. So it's still around the automation, but that's gonna be on more DevOps, SRE, the observability, the monitoring, and the way to have actionable from events. So we have a mention learn still in discussion for June, and we still have also the AJAM series available, so the archive there, and we still waiting the discussion to start again. So that's for the incoming meetup and webcast we're gonna have. In terms of community activity, we have the content made available to you via the workshop on demand. Obviously, we have that ability to allow you to hand on various subjects from mostly oriented developer or automation, or the way to consume an API. An example, we have a workshop on demand around Aruba Central. So I'll be pasting the web link in the chat later on. The community it also activities. So if you're willing to join um, to meet with SMEs and other, don't hesitate. We have a Slack channel, so you need by following that link, you're gonna receive an invite to the Slack workspace where various channels are available, including Aruba and HP networking content. We have that newsletter, so it's a monthly newsletter. It's just to announce the incoming meetup and activity, and also the various blog which we're hosting. And talking about blog, we have numerous of blog available. So if you want to contribute and you are subject matter expert, or you want to simply to post a blog, don't hesitate. There is a way an easy way to contribute. I'll paste the web link later. So that's almost what we're doing at the HP Developer Community Program. So you have the sum up here. We are on Slack. We have that newsletter. You can reach out by mail, obviously, hpdev@hpe.com. We're on X, and we have those workshop made available to you. So I think I'm done on my side. So that was the housekeeping thing. And so I'm gonna then hand off to Colin for the session. So I'm going to stop in the sharing. And
So hello, everybody, and welcome to our second session of the collab between the HP Networking Automation team and the Dev Meetup community. My name is Colin Koss. I'm an automation TME. I work under Alvin Castro. He's my automation manager, and he's going to be here in the chat answering some Q&A as we go. Now, today is a special session. We're going to be talking about network operations, particularly with our PyCentralv2 software development kit. So a quick review of the agenda for today. We're going to start off with a PyCentral review. For those of you who didn't join us for the last meetup, I'll kind of try and catch you up to speed and fill you in on what you need to know. And we're going to waste no time getting straight into the different features that PyCentral can offer you for network operations. We're going to talk a little bit about configuration, monitoring, troubleshooting, and streaming, all natively supported in the SDK. And at the end, we're going to have a special little teaser. So first up, let's get you guys all up to speed. Let's talk about PyCentral Review and some resources we have available to enable you guys with content. So since our first session went over all the basics of Central, I'm going to get you up to speed with the content specifically for PyCentral and the core SDK features here. So one of the core SDK features is going to be our scope hierarchy module. When working with Central, the key to configuration is managing and detecting the details of the scope. You'll need to use scope IDs and a lot of the data that's part of the scope hierarchy in your normal automation workflows. So we have this built in to initialize on startup with connection with the SDK. So you can easily reference everything already without having to make additional calls. You just simply have to reference the data. Now we do have full included support for the GLP API. This means that with PyCentral as the SDK, you can do everything you need to do to onboard your devices, including subscriptions, user management, service assignments, all of that's included. Now, token management itself is not the hardest after we've updated the tokens to the new central tokens. However, the SDK does manage refreshing and handling all your tokens that way, so there's no need to manually generate or refresh tokens anymore when using PyCentral. And then lastly, some module support for key API categories. If you couldn't tell from the agenda, we do have module support for these categories that are going to be doing the bulk of the work for you in PyCentral. This covers everything from profiles, monitoring, troubleshooting, streaming, and scopes like we already talked about. Now, the beauty of PyCentral here is it abstracts a lot of the low-level HTTP requests that you would have to do during normal automation away from the user. And PyCentral handles most of that, exposing simple Python functions for you instead. So that's all great, that's all good, but how do we actually get started with PyCentral? So first up, we have a plethora of step-by-step guides. We do have a link to our developer hub and specifically our PyCentral Getting Started guide in the bottom right on the barcode. If you want to take a look at that, it's going to allow you to explore tons of different guides, everything from setup, authentication, to getting started making your very own API automation calls in those guides. We even have examples for configuration and troubleshooting, etc. These are some of the demos that we're also going to go over today. So you can kind of get a taste of what we have to offer, and then if you want full in-depth guides, those are available there. Now, speaking of demos, we have a full GitHub repository suite available called Central Python Workflows. This is where you guys should be going to get started fast with real use cases. All of our workflows on our Central Python Workflows repository are made from field requests or customer requests that have been in demand. So these are what we've prioritized exactly for these PyCentral demos themselves. And then, of course, we are always supporting PyCentral. It gets regular releases, and it's being continuously driven by feedback. So you don't need to worry about anything getting outdated. We're constantly working to update this every single sprint. Additionally, we do have a robust PyCentral documentation on our Read the Docs. To check out more in-depth module documentation, you're going to want to reference this website. This is going to give you direct access to all of our modules and functions, making it even easier to get started in writing workflows, especially if you're somebody who really likes to get hands-on with code and understand what exactly is going on under the hood. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about Central Python workflows and showcase some of the ready-to-go scripts that we have before going into any demos. So as I mentioned before, it's our GitHub repository, and it always features an ever-growing suite of curated sample scripts. The workflows we upload here are ready to execute out of the box. You may need to add some configuration files for some of these workflows, but that can't be helped. It is required to designate your configuration requirements for scripts. So like I said, they feature our most requested use cases, and they're regularly being updated. Keep an eye on this repo if this is the type of thing you're interested in. Since we're always updating it with new content, you'll see new workflows popping up every now and then. All right, so moving right along here, we're going to get started with configuration. I want to start the PyCentral discussion with configuration operations because it's generally the core of what people are going to be doing in regard to setting up their devices with configuration in Python and Central itself. So the SDK has some configuration features I wanted to highlight. So it leverages configuration through several modules to pull everything together. We have a robust profiles base class, which handles abstracting all of your profile operations. Since profiles in Central is what makes configuration work, we wanted to make sure that we had a very easy way to simple Python functions that users can understand what they are directly. And we include a robust profiles base class in that. Scope hierarchy. This is a little bit of what we talked about before, but the scope module, of course, has all the capabilities to detect the entire mapping system of scopes internally when it's initialized. So this is going to make it easier for you to do anything scope related. I do have an example for you in a slide or two with a specific demo for renaming host names, where I'll show you the power of the scope hierarchy feature. Profile assignment, of course, with profiles, we have to be able to assign them. So we do have built-in simplified profile functions to handle the scope to profile relationship automatically. And then last but not least, there is, in addition, a universal API handler that you can always use if you need full customization for a manual request. You can absolutely do that with the SDK. So our first example of a Central Python workflow script here is going to be device onboarding. Now, we're not going to demo this one today since we are working on a more production-ready version coming out next week. However, the purpose of the script is I did still want to go through it, walk through it with you guys, and explain the power of device onboarding script that we have available. So what we're doing here is we want to demonstrate automating the complete onboarding journey for a device in order for it to go from no assignments, no configuration to being fully configurable and central once it's been added to the GLP device inventory. Now, this script in particular does require the devices to already be added to the device inventory, but not to worry, we also have a workflow for that. We're not going to show you that one today, but you can totally automate adding devices to the GLP device inventory as well. So this workflow works in two phases. First is the GLP onboarding. It's going to go through the process of taking unassigned devices and assigning them to central application instances. In addition, it's also going to be applying subscription licenses using subscription keys to enable that central management. Now, once the GLP onboarding is complete, the script moves into central onboarding, where it covers a couple things. Central onboarding itself includes site creation and device assignment, device function configuration. So device function needs to be assigned to each device. For example, a switch could be either an access switch or it could be a core switch. So this is something that's configured during the device onboarding script as well. And optionally, you can create device groups and assign devices to device groups as well. And then last, we're going to go through some provisioning verification. So this script is a real all-in-one package for getting you from nothing being assigned on your devices to being configuration ready, all-in-one execution of a script. Excuse me. So it does require an onboarding variable configuration file detailing the items to be set up. So think of items such as device serial, application, assignment information, a site you want it to be assigned to, and additional device info. So I'll show you what an example configuration file looks like now. But like I mentioned before, we're not going to demo this one today. Let me see if I can, excuse me, make this bigger for you guys. So our configuration file for onboarding is going to include, like I mentioned before, the device information. So for each device, you do need to designate the name of the application assignment and the region, in addition to the subscription key you want to use, and the site you want it to be assigned to. And the same follows with sites. You'll include the information for the sites you want to create. And this is a great tool to create multiple sites as well. And then finally, device groups. You'll also have to designate the information for device groups, and that's what this looks like here. Okay. So now that onboarding's all done, let's say, for example, we've recently onboarded some new devices. Well, we should probably get started with some basic configuration, right? And that's going to bring us to our next workflow, renaming host names. Renaming host names is a common and popular network operation, but to be honest, everyone knows it can be quite cumbersome to do this manually. If you have to go into the central UI or any UI and manually change host names, log into a device and change a host name that way, it can get cumbersome. So we created this workflow primarily to demonstrate how easy some network operations like this can be with PyCentral. And I also wanted to highlight, like I mentioned before, I was speaking about how scopes have a built-in module in PyCentral. I wanted to highlight this specifically here. So renaming host names on its own by itself requires you to gather things like the scope IDs and device functions. Scope IDs of the devices in the central hierarchy, in addition to the device functions, right? So when working directly with the API, you would normally have to gather this information in another manner. And this just adds extra steps that are not required when using PyCentral package already. The SDK abstracts these steps away from you using the scopes module, which already has this data initialized on startup. So in the rename hostname scripts, we simply reference that data to get the scope ID and device function of the devices as they are already configured in Central without having to do extra API calls. Now, these are exactly the type of enhancements that we've implemented throughout the package, and it's all for the goal of enhancing the user experience of Central in tandem with our APIs. So of course, the configuration file required for rename hostnames is very simple. So I'll show you what that looks like. You only have to designate the serial numbers. Um, excuse me, wrong tab. You only have to designate the serial number of the target device and the new host name that you'd like to change it to. And the flow of the script itself functions in 3 steps. We first validate config file inputs, check device status, make sure it's both in inventory and provisioned, and then finally executing, updating the host names. So now that we've gotten all of the legwork out of the way, let's show you a real demo. So first thing I'm going to show you guys is our central instance. I have a site set up for our Dev Meetup demos. So I'll take you to that now and show you what that looks like. And we'll take a look at some of the devices there and their host names currently. So as you can see, we have a couple devices in Central Live right now, and we have some host names. So let's go ahead and change those. Let's switch over here. Going to grab a command real quick. Let's run this guy. And on execution, we're going to see some output from the script itself. It's going to allow us to track the progress here. So we have some nice little terminal output. First, of course, like I mentioned in the process, it follows the same steps we talked about. We check for the device in central. Once it's verified, we get some confirmation output. After that, it moves on to assigning the host name. Once that's been successfully or failed, it'll give you a nice helpful output there. And then at the end, you're going to get a nice grid, a nice table grid with a summary of the actions performed. So that looked like some stuff happened, but what does it actually look like? Well, let's go back and see if any of these have been updated. So we'll need to refresh our pane here. So I'm just going to refresh our site pane. And take a look at that. So it looks like 2 out of our 3 devices have updated already. So the switches usually take a little bit longer than the APs to update in the UI. Sometimes it gets a little sticky. But as you can see, we've updated our APs. And let's actually take a look here and see if we can confirm that the configuration's been pushed and it's just on the UI. I'm just gonna have Central run a quick running config command just to make sure the host name is updated. And there we go. Okay, so our configuration has been pushed to our switch. It's just a little sticky in the UI. So that'll update shortly. Okay, let's move back over to our slides. I hope you all enjoyed that rename hostnames demo. We're going to move on to another one shortly. So let's take a look at the next one now. So all about profiles, right? Profiles, like I mentioned, are the heart of configuration in Central. In our previous session, we went over all the basics of central configuration in general and profiles, but we also have guides available on our developer hub. So if you did miss that session, please take a look at our developer hub. We have full guides on everything you need to know about profile operations. We have an entire dedicated section for it. If you'd like a refresher on how all this works. But this brings us to our second script. The point of this script is to demonstrate how to perform all of the CRUD operations with PyCentral Profiles module itself. Now, we talked about having this robust profiles module, but we actually have to see it in action, right? So this script features a step-by-step, fully narrative commentary in the script itself. So you'll want to get your eyes on that to walk through that step by step. But the profile modules includes implementations for individual and bulk profile operations. What that means is we have simple Python functions for creating individual profiles, or if you want to create multiple profiles all at the same time, we have separate functions for that. The SDK supports both ways for however you prefer to automate or whatever works best for your use cases. Now, what this script actually does is it runs through the process of creating, retrieving, updating, and deleting profiles in individual and bulk. Now, for this demo, I've just edited the script to add a couple stops during execution. I just want to demonstrate the profile behavior. That way we can take a look at how automation impacts the central profiles in real time. So we'll start by creating an individual DNS profile, and we'll go through the CRUD process, and then we'll go through the same thing with a batch of VLAN profiles. So let me go over. Okay, let's start up top. I'm going to show you just a snippet from the script for the data of the profile we're going to create. Just so you guys know, I'm not pulling a fast one on you. So this is going to be a simple configuration profile with the minimum required settings for configuration in Central. I'm going to pop over to my Central instance just to show you guys that that's not currently created. I'm going to go to the system card and DNS server. So as you can see, we only have one profile right now, and it's not the the example DNS profile. Let's just clear this up here. Move over here. And then let's get started. Oops. Okay, so you're going to see some output spit out onto the screen, and then we'll have a stop. So what you're looking at here is our profiles functions API returns responses. So I just wanted to show you guys this because it's to demonstrate what exactly PyCentral functions can return to you as well. So you can get a kind of a feel for the data is there if you need to access actual API response data. You can do that with PyCentral as well. So as you can see, we've created our DNS and then we've done a retrieval where we can see the data of the profile we've just created. If we move back over here, we'll refresh the pane and we'll see that the profile is now live. Here we go. And then what we're going to be updating is our description here. So as you can see, we have this example description right there. We're going to continue the demo and it's going to update the profile for us. Just like that, we have updated the profile's description and we've done another get. And as we can see, we now have updated by script this description. I can show you here too as well, just to be thorough. And here we go, updated by script. So lastly, we're going to run some cleanup with a delete function, and then we're going to creating a batch of VLAN profiles. So let me show you what that looks like. So next up, we're going to look at the bulk API calls. We're going to create all three of these profiles in one single function call, which is where the flexibility of PyCentral comes in. Whatever use case you may have for individual versus bulk, they're both supported, right? So let's continue on here. And the endpoint for getting everything, it pulls all the profiles. So we do have a handful of profiles already existing in our central instance itself. So forgive me for a little bit of clutter there, but I'll show you our batch of profiles we've just created. So we have 40, 92, 93, and 94 all here. And then we're going to follow just the same process. So if we go back, we're going to update their descriptions. All their descriptions have been updated. And then last but not least, we're going to run some cleanup. So in the script itself is where you're going to see exactly what function call you need to make to initiate all of these actions. And that's really the whole goal of that profile operation workflow. I'll just show you, see, we've deleted 3 profiles. Our profile count went down. So I won't go into extra details there on that one. Okay, back to our slides. So we talked a little bit about configuration. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about monitoring. So PyCentral supports a suite of monitoring APIs featuring functions that abstract the handling of monitoring data. The features include functions for monitoring capabilities to receive data from APs, clients, gateways, sites, and even WLAN. Monitoring is one of the most popular use cases for network automations. So we wanted to make sure that we really had everything covered and it works really well. So let's take a closer look at some monitoring module highlights. So first up, each individual module includes simple, easy to use functions and easy to understand functions to simplify all the many different API options away from the user. If you look at the API reference, there's a lot of configuration options, or sorry, not configuration, excuse me. There's a lot of options that you can do for manipulating the APIs, and there's a lot of APIs to use, right? So we want to make that simple for you. So in PyCentral, you look at the monitoring module and sites, for example, and what do you see? Okay, you see a function called get all sites. Well, that seems fairly straightforward, and it is. It's going to retrieve all the site information for you of all the sites in your workspace, including health details. It even handles pagination for you right there. Okay, so maybe you don't want all sites, you want an individual sites. Well, there's list site information function for that. You can just get individual site information if that's what you prefer. Now for devices, the device module, of course, returns all the detailed device data of the devices in Central. However, for these ones, they do have to be monitored for the most part. So for get all devices, for example, this is only going to return details for monitored devices. And this is going to get you things like serials, MACs, deployments, uptime, firmware, lots of data, right? If you want to use a separate API excuse me, if you want to use a separate function, we have get all device inventory that's going to get everything from all devices on your account, including the devices that are not yet onboarded to Central. So it's just as simple as that with PyCentral. And then lastly, clients. So get all clients will pull the clients for your entire workspace, and it even includes additional optional filters. Of course, you can filter by site or device or anything like that. There's even specific function calls for getting wired clients versus getting wireless clients. So for example, to make my point more clear, when working with an API for clients, for example, and you want to get all wired clients, right? That's going to require you to set a filter variable and the parameters of the API to pull that. PyCentral kind of abstracts that away once again. So instead of having to craft your filter, apply it to the API, and then run it manually that way, you can just run the get wired clients endpoint, and it's going to do all that for you. So the clients module also just includes in general a lot of handy additional functions. Think like getting failed clients, getting client usage, top trends, etc. The clients module is really cool. And I just wanted to summarize the monitoring modules for you once again. There's just no mucking about with the individual API calls. Simply call the function that does what it says it does in PyCentral and let the SDK do the hard work for you. So for monitoring, I have a workflow for you. Here's another workflow featured in our Central Python workflows is our device metrics export. This utilizes the monitoring module in PyCentral in combination with GLP to pull and export network operation critical information. It consolidates all these details into a convenient CSV file and spits that out for you. And you get details such as device attributes, monitoring data, connectivity status, even subscription details, all in a single CSV. So this is a workflow that leverages all the different modules of PyCentral, pulls them together, generates you a data sheet that would require multiple endpoint calls, and you get it in one single CSV for easy analysis and reporting. So from the monitoring side, it uses get all devices and get device inventory. And from the GLP modules, it uses get all devices and get all subscriptions. I know some of these may sound similar, but they don't actually all return the same data, but this script will do that for you. So I'm going to jump over to the script and run a demo. The script execution itself is fairly simple. And then what's really interesting is our CSV output. So then we'll take a look at the output CSV and take a look at all the data that we get from this workflow. Okay, let me move over here. And I'm going to grab my command. Plug that guy in. And we're going to generate this output file designated in the CLI, dev meetup export.csv. I know, original file name, right? Okay, so it processed all 28 devices in our central inventory, and it saved it to the export as designated in the CLI. So let's take a look at this information, right? So this is a lot of stuff. I told you guys, this really pulls together several different endpoints and gets a lot of very useful information. So we take a look at some of the headers. We get things like subscription end time, subscription type, tier, key. We even have configuration status. You can see in the gray that most of my devices are synchronized. That looks good. Some have updates in progress. In addition to all the other stuff that's important, such as device group, site, status, uptime. Anyone? Uptime? Yeah. So my point is that there's a whole plethora of information here that's just easily accessible by running this workflow. These are all network operation critical fields for monitoring in particular, so it's very helpful. Okay, moving right along here. All right, I feel like we're making good time here. So next up is troubleshooting. Let's talk about it. Troubleshooting APIs are different than most of the other central APIs, and they can be a little bit tricky compared to other sections. And this is mostly because troubleshooting APIs operate as async for the most part on an initiate and pull status. So you'll need to run an API to initiate the um, the the command, for example, and then you need to run another endpoint to track and pull that until it's complete. So that sounds like a little bit of extra hoops to jump through, but nothing to fear. PyCentral, of course, does all that asynchronous behavior for you, and it also allows them to invoke and pull on their own. So on the screen here, you're going to see a list of module function support as of our current release. And then we're going to take a look at invoking some of these in our next workflow. But I wanted to highlight the available functions. As you can see, the list is quite large. There's a lot to look at. And we support all of these directly in PyCentral. So for our monitoring demo, we're going to take a look at the cutover validation script. This is one of my favorite workflows we have in Central Python workflows, just because it's just so robust and well made. So say, for example, in scenarios such as onboarding to Central, maybe migrating from AOS 8 to AOS 10, migrating from Classic to Central, or any other environment transitions, it's an extremely common task to have to run multiple commands across multiple devices. And these are often scoped at a site level, maybe, or a specific device list. But that's what the cutover validation workflow is for. It's very common to have to pull all of these checks across multiple devices, right? So this script automates that process by allowing you to execute commands, leveraging the show commands function repeatedly without manually logging into individual devices. So this script does specifically leverage show commands. So for this demo, we're going to leverage that and show you executing multiple commands at multiple APs in our demo site all together at the same time. Now for the script itself, there's a handful of functions of support that you'll see bolded in the bullets on your screen. So of course it does validate all the commands against device capabilities before execution. So it's not going to try and run something on an AP that it can only run on a switch or anything like that. And it can execute up to 20 commands per device in a single execution. It does generate several different outputs. So it generates a JSON, an HTML, and a Markdown format report, including with timestamps. So whatever tools you're using, there's 3 different outputs generated that should hopefully be compatible with one of those tools. And then, of course, it does let you select devices by site for targeted troubleshooting during runtime execution in real time, which is really cool. And there's also real-time execution status and error tracking. So next up, we're going to switch over to our workflow. I'm going to show you what some sample input looks like, because there are 2 sample inputs. You'll need to designate the devices you want to work with and the commands that you want to run. I'll show you what that looks like, and then we'll get started with some execution. Let's close these 2. So our devices input file, it's a simple YAML list. It's nothing complicated. You can do it in a couple different formats, whatever you prefer. But for this example, I'm just doing it in this basic format where I include device serials under a device YAML item. And then for the commands themselves, the syntax is simply commands and then just including list items like so. So for this example, we're going to run these 4 commands on 2 of the APs in our demo meetup session site. So let me clear this out. Go here. And the script itself, expand this a little bit. All right, so let's take a look. So as you can see, it walks us through loading for troubleshooting commands. And we're using site selection mode since we didn't provide a site configuration or a target file for that. So what Central does, or excuse me, what the script does is it uses PyCentral's hierarchy to pull the scopes, and it gets a list of all the site names that have devices and devices online, right? Since we only did APs, that's what we're looking at. So we're going to go ahead and select our Dev Meetup demo here, which is option number 1 with 2 online APs. And that's where all of our commands are going to get run at. It's going to hit us with a little confirmation just to make sure, listing the commands that we've loaded and the devices to be running them on. Working a little bit of magic here. Okay, and just like that, it looks like we've generated our reports. We've generated HTML Markdown and the JSON. It looks like everything was generated successfully. We had 8 commands across 2 devices. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Markdown generated here to take a look at this report. So I think this is really cool. It generates this nice Markdown format for a human readable format, but we get a nice device overview, even a table of contents, and then it goes through device by device, specifying the command and the output from the command. Second command, and so on. So that wraps up our cutover validation demo. And I still have a little more gas in the tank for you guys here. Up next is streaming. So streaming in PyCentral. If you're not familiar with streaming, I'll give you a little bit of detail here, but there's much more in-depth guides and documentation on our developer hub for it. But I'll give you kind of a general idea of streaming in PyCentral and how it works, and then we'll take a look at a demo of that next. So streaming APIs in general are continuous real-time full duplex WebSocket connections that persist usually forever or until a connection is broken by either side between a client and a server. So PyCentral has native support for central streaming APIs. Normally, there is a multi-step process for getting human readable data from the streaming API. And in the case of Central, it's a 2-step decoding process. Now, with PyCentral, when you use our streaming module and the SDK, the end user doesn't have to interact with any of that. All you have to do is define the event type of the stream you want to listen for and run the streaming module to connect. And streaming messages from the PyCentral module are going to output to the terminal fully decoded. While we don't have a workflow built just yet for specifically for streaming, we do have a sample that I'll be showing you the implementation for what it looks like for streaming audit trail events with PyCentral in the demo. So let's move over to that. Oh, we got some toolbar in the way here. I'm going to close up some of my tabs. Okay, so as you can see here, like I said, this is not a workflow that's currently included in Central Python workflows. It's just a sample implementation that we have available. So it's a very simple script. Like I mentioned before, all you have to do is designate the event that you want to listen for the streaming module, which is called like so. In this case, we're going to take a listen for audit trail events. So let me open up my terminal here and we'll run the stream test for you to take a look at. Okay, so it looks like we created a token and we've connected. So it's been established and we're listening for audit trail events. Let me go generate one for you. I find one of the easiest ways to generate some audit trail event traffic without doing anything configuration, simply making floor plan edits. So I'm going to generate some very interesting custom walls for you guys. Okay, so that should have triggered an audit trail response. Let's see what we have. So here we go. We've received a message. The message we received gives us some tracking tags, tells us the action, so wall type created, the category, of course, being floor plan manager. It even tells us who the source was, myself, guilty as charged. And all these details come with the streaming API. Okay, so we can go ahead and delete this, and it should generate another audit trail event. And just like that, here we are, received another message. This time our action is wall type deleted, and we have all the other details that you would expect from audit trail events. But all this is natively built into PyCentral, and the ease of access is, I do enjoy using it. Okay, so I'm gonna Control C to get a clean disconnect here and close this stream down. There we go. Okay, and I think we have 5 minutes or so left before any more Q&A. So we do have time for our special teaser here. Thank you all for waiting till the end. I have one more thing to show you. I think you might think it's really cool. So what I'm going to show you a little demo of is Central MCP. So we have recently released this unofficial guide on our developer hub for integrating AI agents with your central instance via the PyCentral module operations. So this is really cool, and I was hoping I'd have time to show you guys this because I feel like this example is what's really cool about PyCentral. It allows us to integrate with things like MCP to show you how we're actually tying the whole experience together with PyCentral and what it can do, right? So if you're not familiar with what an MCP is, it stands for a Model Context Protocol, and it's essentially an open standard for how AI models are supposed to connect to external tools. So it'll allow users to query the AI agent itself with questions such as like, how's my site doing? What's the site health? Show me clients, things like that. So I have a small local MCP server instance that I've used one of our very own Developer Hub guides to use to demo for you guys today. In this case, functionality is currently restricted to read only, and it's mostly monitoring via get operations exposed from PyCentral. But let's take a look at the guide. I just want to show you what's here. Uh, so we have this whole section right here, and this is our developer. Oh, apologies for getting ahead of myself. This is our Developer Hub guides, and we have a full suite of guides for MCP and how you can get started, what's it about, what it can do. And we have setups for 3 different methods here. So let me show you just a quick example of what that looks like. I have, like I said before, this is my own local MCP server that I've connected with some of the PyCentral modules. So how we can check that it's active, we can see here that my central MCP is connected and plugged in, and we have a list of tools from PyCentral that it has access to, right? So I can query my agent with questions like, let's say, give me an overview of my dev meetup demo site, and we'll see what it can do. Me patiently waiting for success. Definitely earning its keep right now. And look at that. Here we go. All at the simple query to the AI agent. It's gone ahead and used some of the underlying PyCentral functions to pull and generate me this info. So it's given me my site information and even gave me what devices are connected. Um, let's see if I can push it a little bit and tell me more about these devices. And like I said, this is just a very simple implementation. Um, and it's able to do this like as is with a very simple setup. So even like this, it's able to pull and generate me all this information on my devices. So this is really pretty cool. Um, this is some cutting edge stuff that we're working on. And like I said, we've just recently released these guides, so please do check them out and let us know what you think. But please do be careful working with AI in general. Okay, back to my slides. We have some additional resources. This will be included in the slide deck that will be available for all of you. There's links to our developer hub, our GitHub, Airheads developer community, Ansible Galaxy. And if you want to email us directly, you can find all of us on the automation team at network-automation@hpe.com. Most of you, I'm assuming, are already a part of our Slack channel since this is the HPE Dev Meetup. But with that, I'll bid you all a thank you. And that's the end of my presentation. I think we're right on time with any leftover Q&A. We could probably go ahead and take care of now. I don't know if there's anything that's unanswered, but I hope you all enjoyed your time with me today, and I hope I didn't go on for too long. And of course, I hope you
Yeah,
learned something useful.
that's perfect. You're right on time, Colin. Thank you very much. And including the last section about MCP is quite exciting, actually. And that's really true. We have a few minutes left. So uh, if there is a remaining question or someone who would like to ask a question live, uh, we have some minutes, so don't hesitate. Oh, I see a question in the Q&A section already. So maybe you want to answer live.
Let me take a look here. Uh,
So can we use HPE GitHub Copilot as an MCP server?
yeah, so the co Alvin just posted a response with some resources, but the demo I showed you for MCP server was with the GitHub Copilot integration. Now there's a couple other that I think I showed in the slide. There's a guide for the central MCP server, excuse me, with Claude Desktop and Claude Code, I believe. But yeah, take a look at those links that Alvin posted, and you'll be able to find all the information for the other agentic AI agents set up there.
Mm. Oh,
Yeah, and
and
like Alvin said, I'm sure we'll probably have another more detailed session specifically with central and MCP servers. This was just a small teaser.
all right, and we will be pleased to host that session then. All right. So
I did see another question from Justin. I'm not sure if that got answered. Let me take a look at that real quick. You can go ahead, Matthew. Oh,
um, okay, uh, yeah, I can see the question. So you can
what can
raise
we
your
do?
hand also if you want to talk. Uh, I can unmute you, so you can ask live or typing in the Q&A or
Yeah.
afterwards.
So just to respond to Justin's question real quick, he mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
he's been building a ton of custom modules himself with manual coding, um, handling things like checking for rate limits and headers, all that stuff. He's asking specifically if there's a community to be more involved with that kind of data. I would say your best bet is probably the developer forum on Airheads. I'm doing my best to try and be more active with that forum. Um, and if this is an internal discussion, we could have a separate conversation um, with PLMs. Sorry, that was kind of a half answer, so forgive me for that.
And you can always join Slack, let's say, and ask question here, and
Of
I'm pretty
course.
sure you will have some answer quite rapidly there. So I think uh, if there is no more question or action, we can then close that meetup section.
I
So
think let me touch back on Justin's question real quick. I think I'm
okay.
understanding it a little more. If you specifically need some help with identifying like yeah, if you specifically need more help with like monitoring and data, you could always feel free to reach out to us if you need help finding a specific data attribute. We can kind of point you towards the right API, that sort of thing. Feel free to reach out to us directly. Yep. Thanks, Alvin. Exactly.
All right, and you got an arc. So um, oh, and the last question here, open. Are the AI agent-friendly API reference links available? Um,
Could you say, well, where is the question posted?
so, are there AI agent-friendly API reference links available?
Um,
Friendly API reference, yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
totally, I'm not totally sure I'm understanding the full question.
Uh, I would assume what API and the agent can query
Mm,
or not. That
okay.
may be
Yeah,
the
so in that
closest
case,
I can think.
in the demo I showed in our setups on our guide, it's exposing the PyCentral functions and endpoints to the agent, so that's what it's querying.
Workshop would be really great and much fun. Yeah, that's really true. Now we have to to work on our workshop on demand, and
Yeah,
so people can.
so much potential.
Yeah. That's and uh, and feel free to reach out to us to the HP Dev community if you're willing to help in that area. That could be interesting. All right. Uh, yeah, and actually doing a workshop on a live workshop on demand. Oh, that could be interesting as well. Yeah, thanks for the suggestion, actually. All right. So I think we at the end of the session. I don't want uh, to use the time. We have 3 minutes left, but let's give it a close. Thank you very much again, Colin. Thank you, everybody, for attending the session. Thank you, Alvin, to be there as well, answering questions. And then I wish you a good day, all, and see you next time for a meetup session. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter to get an update on the next session. So thank you again, and see you next time.
Thanks for having us.
Bye bye.